yeah, man. All out of options, nothing to choose. I pieced out on Netflix, I'm sick of the news. I'd sign up to Sky, but I don't wanna pay. I've been on furlough since May. Never go and listen to a Cockney attitude. Ooh, breaking away. Got to find a better way. I'd rather watch Auf Wiedersehen again and listen to what these old men have to say.
Hello, and welcome back, and guten Tag. And this is Auf Wiedersehen Again podcast episode 4. Yeah, this is episode 4, George. Once again, one of the longest relationships I've ever had. So how the devil are you on this fine and wonderful day, my friend?
Yeah, fantastic day, nice and sunny in London. Just been going through my wardrobe, throwing out some jeans that haven't got a hope in hell of fitting in again. So I've upgraded my waist from a 34 to a 36 now.
Oh, mate, I could only dream about a 36. A 36 would be a fucking absolute miracle for me. So yeah, I saw you posting up on Instagram earlier about your jeans. I was getting a bit jealous, but you know, like I say, I'm currently sitting at around a 40, 42 myself.
I'll be there. Don't worry, I'll be getting there.
I need to get, like I say, if I could get down to a 36, I'd be the happiest man alive.
There's literally 6 pairs I could not even do up.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way back. I mean, I left them out for the cleaners. You know, they might want them.
Were you doing charity shop or?
Oh no, I just left it by the bin chute. the cleaners will pick it up.
Right, okay. So, as always, we welcome any constructive criticism, feedback, or abuse via email on aufwiedersehenagain@gmail.com. That's aufwiedersehenagain@gmail.com. Please follow us on social media. Our Instagram is @Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast. That's Instagram @Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast. We are on Twitter @Auf Again. That's AUFAGAIN. That's Twitter @Auf Again. Please do like and share the Facebook page, which is Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast. And if you are watching on YouTube, or even if you're listening, please do head over to YouTube and please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast. And if you could subscribe and click the bell, and that will alert you to any new episodes. And as always, we are available on all good podcast platforms: Spotify, iTunes, Anchor, Google Podcast, Breaker, and many more. As usual, our theme music is composed and performed by the guitar man himself, Mr. Lee Dosky. And if you could please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, Auf Wiedersehen Again podcast is sponsored by Top Gun Tattooing of number 12, the Harris Arcade in Reading. Their website is www.topguntattoo.co.uk, and their phone number is 01189 968 667. So we have 2 special offers for the listeners and watchers of Auf Wiedersehen Again podcast. So number 1 is you can get yourself a 20% discount off the cost of any tattoo at Top Gun Tattooing. How do you do this, may I ask? Well, it's very, very simple. You either contact by telephone or in person, and you need to speak to Zach, who's one of the tattooists, and the code to get your 20% discount off your tattoo is Hadaway and Shiteman. So if you speak to Zach and you say Hadaway and Shiteman, you can get 20% off your tattoo. But George, also please tell our listeners and watchers how they can get a free tattoo.
Yeah, if you get Lottie tattooed on your arm, it will be free.
Yeah, so you get the Neville and Lottie tattoo on your arm. We, from our Wiedersehen Again podcast, will pay for your tattoo. So like I say, all you got to do is email us on aufwiedersehenagain@gmail.com and you can get yourself a free tattoo. Now, not satisfied with giving away free tattoos, we also have our first podcast.
Really?
So this is Pat Roach's autobiography. Well, biography. I think there was with Pat Roach and Shirley Thompson. So Pat Roach's biography. It is entitled "If," which is the famous George Orwell poem. Is it George Orwell? I think it's George Orwell. Anyway, so if you would like to get your hands on this fantastic epistle of Pat Roach's life, which has got a foreword by it's Rudyard Kipling. I knew it wasn't George Orwell. Fucking 1984. Yeah, Rudyard Kipling. If it's about being a man. So anyway, the foreword is by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he talks about
brilliant.
Beginning. Yeah, he used to do some weightlifting.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And yes, there we go. The poem is "If" by Rudyard Kipling. So if you can keep your head when all about are losing theirs and blaming it on you.
Oh, right. That's I know that.
So our giveaway. So in order to qualify for the giveaway, you must be a follower of us on social media. So we are going to be running the giveaway on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So obviously what it's going to comprise of is you will have to, when we make the post, you will have to like the post, tag a couple of your friends in the post and share the post on your social medias. So obviously we will be launching the post on the same day that this podcast is launched. So it'll be on the Friday. So like I say, keep an eye out on your social medias, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for the giveaway of the Pat Roach book. And what we'll do is we'll run the competition for a couple of weeks in order to give everyone a chance to.
There's some good stories in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously talks about his wrestling days and Indiana Jones, and there's loads of good stuff in there. So like I say, if you want to win the Pat Roach book, keep an eye on the social media platforms, and you will have the option to win the Pat Roach book. Like I say, and all you've got to do is just follow us on social media and click a like and a share, and it could be yours. Absolutely fantastic. So, as I've said, this is the fourth episode of Auf Wiedersehen Again podcast, and right now we are going to be dealing with series 1, episode number 4, which is entitled Suspicion. Now, did you notice anything with regards to the titles, George?
The title? No.
Well, it says when it comes up as the writer, it just came up with Ian Lafrene's name.
Oh, right.
Dick Clement. So, I mean, I don't know this. I did try and have a look. I did try and do a small amount of research, but I couldn't.
Maybe they had a falling out that week, did they?
Well, or maybe he was just away on holiday or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or let's later on in the series, maybe Clement has a.
You do one, I'll do one. Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe like that. I don't know. But I was surprised. And it comes up, and it sort of makes a bit of a point of it, and it says, episode, it comes up and it says, Suspicion, written by Ian Lafrene. It doesn't come up with both of their names. So, maybe we may see one written by Dick Clement on his own later on in the series. But like I say, at the moment, as far as I'm aware, this was purely the work of Ian Lafrene. So the episode starts, and only one way to describe it: it's pissing down the rain, isn't it? Yeah. So it's raining very, 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 very heavily.
Very heavily. Yeah.
And obviously, the building site is deserted. You can see there's no one at work. And you see Dennis walking out of the hut with like a jacket over his head. And then it cuts into the hut, and the lads are playing cards, and Barry's sat there
with porno cards.
Yeah, with porno cards. Yeah, but Barry sat there. Now, Barry sat there with like a little book. What do you think that book is there, George?
Oh, I can't remember what the book is. No.
Do you reckon it's his passbook for the West Bromwich and District?
Oh, right, probably, yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at. I think Barry's probably doing some accounts because obviously the fact is, as we shortly find out, then you know the days that they don't work, they don't get paid.
That's
so
right. Yeah.
Barry's probably worried that his the balance of his West Bromwich and District Building Society account is probably going to be taking a bit of a hit. So he's very much. I think he looks like he's doing some personal accounts there.
Doesn't he say it's a quagmire out there?
It is a quagmire. And yeah, so like you said, they're playing cards, they're playing pontoon with the dirty cards. They say twist or buy, so I don't know what the buy is all about. That's obviously old pontoon rules. I've never really heard that. Can I buy a card, Nev?
No.
So Nev says twist, and then he says, can I buy? And they say, you can't do that. You can only buy. So obviously buying is, so the other people don't know what you've got. And it seems a bit unfair that like Wayne's the banker. So Wayne's going to, whoever gets to be banker, obviously going to win a lot of money.
He's raking it in.
And then Nev says, I'll twist again. And then Oz pipes up and says, like we did last summer. And you can basically tell that this is probably the 10,000th time that Oz has fucking hit this joke. And they're all like, oh, will you shut up? Will you shut up? So yeah, like Oz is probably like really annoying people with the twist again joke. He's probably, like I say, it's probably at least the 100th time he's done that today. So Nev busts out at 22 and Wayne gets 20 and he says he pays 21s.
Yeah.
Then, like you say, Barry and Moxie, Barry walks over to where Moxie's in bed, says there's a quagmire, and then he's questioning whether they're going to have the ability to actually go back to work. Do you think we're going to be laid off? And as becomes a bit of a common theme, Moxie's not very well, and he says it suits me. He says I'm not well. Have you know? And did you see the quality paisley pajamas that Moxie was wearing? Oh, I mean, absolute blinders they were. And
he does spend a lot of time in bed being ill, I suppose.
He does, yeah. Like I say, he's very much a sickly type of person. So, and then Oz comes out with some proper Geordie, and he says it's still plutin it doon, which is a proper Geordie word for rain. And Wayne's like, what? Like obviously can't understand a word he's saying. And Oz is like, hoyin it doon. And still, doon's again a proper Geordie
pissing
word. Down.
Yeah.
He goes, cats and dogs. And like he puts on a posh voice and he goes, it's pissing down. And Wayne's like, at least that's English. Oh no, Bomber says, at least that's English. And then Nev the full of excitement and fantastic stuff, starts talking about how the word comes from the French. And he goes, that's the French word for rain, plout. Well, it's close. It's il pleut, means rain in French. Wayne's trying to, push the game. Wayne's obviously winning money and he wants the momentum. He
wants more, yeah.
He's like, what are you doing? And they're all sort of, losing themselves in the discussion about the rain and whatever. Anyway, so one of the Turks comes in. The
Ayatollah.
Another Ayatollah. And for some reason, it looks like it's his job to bring the guys some firewood. So they've got like a log burner in the middle of the hut. Anyway, so he walks in and he leaves the door open. And everyone's like, shut the door. Oz busts again. Wayne wins again. And Wayne wins the game again. And you can see the Turk is... I've written down here, the Turk is looking shifty.
Yeah, he's clocking the money.
Exactly. He's having a look around. He's obviously realised that there's something. There's a few bits to be had. And then obviously the lads are like, get out the hut and whatever. So Wayne starts talking about. He goes, if I'd have known I was going to be locked up in a hut with you, I'd have taken a language course down the Burritts on Oxford Street or whatever.
Oh, I remember that place well. We used to go past it all the time.
You used to work on Oxford Street, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Long time, yeah.
So he's like, I'd have taken an elementary course in Geordie. So Oz again is being, quite forceful. He's like telling the Ayatollah to sling his hook. And
he told him 3 or 4 times, didn't he?
yeah, he's like, aye, that's enough for you. Come on, Ayatollah, sling you out. And then for some, I don't know, I've never heard this expression before. So Bomber looks at his cards and he goes, oh, these cards, he goes, I must have killed a Chinaman. So I don't know if killing a Chinaman or obviously Chinese person.
Never heard that.
Chinese person would be more politically correct these days. But yeah, I didn't know that killing a Chinese person gave you bad luck. I mean, I would assume that killing anyone wouldn't give you fantastic luck. And then Nev's continuing with these little bit of the language lessons, which is what he says is very, very true. He says, there's a lot of Geordie words, in Geordie, there's a lot of words come from Danish.
Scandinavia,
yeah, because of the Vikings coming over. And it's actually quite funny. If you go to Denmark and you find a Danish person who speaks fluent English, they sound like a Geordie.
Ah, all right.
Yeah.
I've only been to Norway and Sweden. I haven't been to Denmark.
Yeah. So, because obviously, like I say, I mean, have you ever watched the TV program Vikings?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So there's the bit in the first episode when they come across and they land on Lindisfarne Island, which we call Holy Island.
All right.
There and all that, and that's like Holy Island was where you used to go on school trips when you were a kid and that.
Oh, right.
It's like off the coast of Northumberland. So yes, and obviously then they went down and there was a big Viking settlement in York.
Yeah, a bit of raping and pillaging,
Yeah, and so Northumberland and Newcastle and then all the way down to sort of North Yorkshire was the big Viking stomping ground. So it was like I said, even though nobody else is interested in what Nev's got to say, I personally agree with him and found it quite interesting.
But I see a blonde Geordie, I know where he come from then.
So it cuts to the admin hut and Dennis is in the hut and obviously, Dennis is trying to, work out a way where they can still, get the money for the week. And, Dennis offers to work weekends and Herr Ulrich says it's not popular with the Germans. And then Dennis questions whether they'd still get paid. And sort of Herr Ulrich tries to sort of avoid the topic a little bit, doesn't he? He's like, I think the weather is very English. Basically saying you should be used to this. And Den's like, well, but if we were at home, we'd still get paid. And Herr Ulrich's like, well, here you are self-employed. No work, no pay. And Den starts talking about a contract. I'm like, well, I didn't think it was. I mean, I, for one, didn't think it was a contract. And Herr Ulrich sort of, takes sort of pleasure in saying, I think...
Read the small print.
Yeah. So, it's not a fight, it's not a fight they're ever going to win. So that's it, no work, no pay. They're all sitting in the hut and they're all going to be skint. So, cuts back to the hut. Wayne, again, Wayne keeps winning these card games. I don't know. It was probably his sly idea. Oh, we'll play cards. I'll be dealer. And the next thing he's just...
he's the banker all the time. He's the banker the whole time.
And he's raking the dough off people. So Neb's lost some money. I don't know how much he's lost, but, it was, whether it's, 10, 20 quid, whatever. But Neb's had enough. And then Wayne tries to rope Moxie in. Obviously, Moxie's...
Temperature.
He's not having any of it. And then Oz tries to offer Barry, and Barry goes into a long-winded story about his cousin Jeffrey, who
lost his wife and home.
Well, this is it. So Barry starts entering into this long-winded tale about poker school and how he lost everything, home, like he goes, his home, his car, and his wife. And Oz obviously just isn't interested in Barry's bullshit story, and then but he hears the thing about his wife, and Oz just looks up and goes, "What? Benny's wife on a game of cards?" And he's like, "No, she left when he lost the bungalow." So he had a bungalow in the better part of Dudley. I'm like, I didn't know there was a better part of Dudley. So anyway, Dennis comes back in, explains to the lads. Oh, my coffee machine's making a big noise there.
Oh, right.
Apologies for that. So Dennis comes back in, explains that they're not working till Monday. And Nev begins with the same saga as usual about how he was wanting extra money because, Brenda wants stuff and Brenda wants to retile the bathroom.
That's it. Yeah.
And he says, he obviously better phone. He goes, I better phone her. And I don't know whether this is a joke or, whether he actually believes what he says, but Oz says, oh, you just reverse the charges. It's only England, man. Like, a reverse charge phone call was a really expensive thing to do back in the day.
Yeah, it was actually. Yeah.
And I'm sure that to reverse the charges from Germany would have been even more ridiculous. Anyway, so, Wayne's, they all sort of quit the game, and Wayne's like, I'm going out with a young Fraulein. And Dennis starts to, make suggestions about what they're going to do to entertain themselves in the interim period.
Hire a car. Yeah.
First of all, talks about going to the cinema, but then, like there's a big difference between going to the cinema and hiring a car. But like you say, hires a car, and then Oz. So Oz still in his prisoner of war,
war mode. Yeah,
war mode. Oz still in the war mode. Starts talking about Berlin. He goes, I've always fancied going to Berlin. Can we go to Berlin then? And he goes, well, it's historic and it's interesting. Spies and the war and Hitler's bunker.
Hitler's bunker, yeah.
And then Dennis starts talking about East Berlin. Now, obviously, this was before the fall of the Berlin Wall, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And he goes, what, behind the Iron Curtain? He goes, oh, I'm well up for that. So Dennis says, it's the most miserable and depressing place you've ever seen. And Dev just pipes up, what, worse than here? So, they're trying to decide what they're actually going to do. So, but, it's quite fun. I'm sure it's probably done on purpose, if you notice. So like I say, they talk about how where they are is miserable and depressing. And then they cut to the bar, and Oz and Bomber are on the pinball machine, playing pinball, but they focus on like the back of the pinball machine. And have you seen the guy on the pinball machine?
No, I noticed actually the score, but I didn't see. I can't remember the guy.
There's a picture, it's like a cartoony kind of picture, and the guy on the pinball machine looks happy as fuck. So obviously, like I say, they've cut from Neville going, it's miserable and depressing, and they're cutting as this guy, and he's like this, and he's got a dolly bird on his arm, he's got a bottle of champagne, there's like piles of casino chips and everything like that. And it's like, they've gone from talking about being happy and depressing, and then they've cut to this picture of this, they've cut to this picture of this happy guy on the pinball machine. And so basically, Oz and Bomber are playing pinball, and like you say, what was it? You said you took a note of the score. What did Oz score?
87,202.
That's it. And it was the personal best. And so Neville and Dennis are sitting at the bar, looking miserable, getting the beers in. Wayne takes the beers over to Oz and Bomber, and they take the piss out of him about the way that he's dressed. Obviously, Wayne has got a fairly eclectic dress sense, and Oz takes the piss. He says, look at him, all talked up. He's even polished his earring.
Yeah, I noticed that.
And then when the big surprise is then when he comes back to the bar and Dennis says, Wayne, what do you want to drink? He says, I'll have a Coke.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, obviously, as we find out, he's about to take out a girl who he thinks is, worth it. And so I think what he's doing is by not drinking, he's putting in a bit of effort. Turn up on the date stinking of ale.
Turn up steaming. I've done that in the past.
turn up steaming. So Wayne's putting in. He obviously really likes this girl, and he's putting in a lot of effort. And he even says, this one's a bit tasty. She's not a splosh you can give. She's not a splosh you can give a portion to. Is it portion? Yeah, not a splosh you can give a portion to. He says, she's got a bit up there, and like from the other end of the bar, you hear Bomber, and a bit down there, I bet. So Bomber's earwigging into the conversation, and so Dennis is stood at the bar, and have you seen what he's reading?
Playboy.
Yeah, apparently it's Wayne's Playboy. And he says, what you got this for? And Wayne gives the bog standard answer when anyone asks about Playboy. He goes, it's for the interviews. Because for the interviews. But I don't know if you noticed. I think, well, I don't know if it was it looked from the distance, it looked like there was the girl in the thing had a big hairy bush. I was like,
as they did in those days.
As they did back in those days, yeah. So and then again, you know, they all know Neville's. They all know. So whether they're on a bit of a wind up, I don't know. But obviously they know Neville's domestic situation. But Wayne offers to try and set Neville up. He says, you know, why don't you? I'm sure she's got a mate and all that. And even Dennis joins in. And Neville says, you know, he's got Brenda, and Wayne even he goes, yeah, so, you know, that's in a different country and da. Anyway, so the way that they did it, that's, you know, it quite surprised me the way that Dennis sort of joined in. So I think it was maybe somewhat of a bit of a wind up. I don't know. I don't think it was completely serious. And the thought, you know, but obviously what they're trying to do as well is they're potentially setting it up for later in the episode.
Yeah.
You know, because obviously Neville is, you know, Mr. Faithful, Mr. You know, loves his wife, but we'll see what happens later in the episode. And anyway, so Dennis holds up the centerfold and he says, "Oh, this is a good interview," and it's a picture of the Playboy with some bird with their tits out. So, anyway, so it cuts to the outside, and you see Wayne stood in a shop doorway, and it's pissing down with rain, and that it's actually in Hamburg, not in Dusseldorf.
Yeah.
So that is I looked on the Auf Pet website, and it gives a breakdown of you know, the locations that they.
Yeah.
So that was in Hamburg, not actually in Dusseldorf. And then the white VW Beetle pulls up, and there is a very, very pretty young lady driving the car.
Young Ingrid.
Yes, who is an actress called Christine Garner.
Yeah, it was in Grange Hill.
Yeah, was in a few things. Grange Hill, one of them. So obviously they talk in the car. You know, what would you have been doing in London? And you know, Wayne talks about unemployment and you know, about football hooligans down West Ham and stuff like that. And you know, she says that you know, she speaks good English. She worked in Maidstone as an au pair, and it was the couple that she worked for were an airline pilot and the teacher. And obviously Wayne's very taken aback, and he's trying to give it all his best chat-up lines. And he says, "You're what's known as a very tasty bird." And she goes, "Yes, this is what the airline pilot told me."
Yeah, I bet.
So it sounds to me like she may well have had intimate knowledge of the airline pilot, but who knows? It's very much insinuated though. So again, you know, they're walking down a shopping parade, like under a colonnade. And again, this is in Hamburg. It's not in Germany. It's not in Dusseldorf. And they see a jewelry shop. And obviously Wayne's talking about how he likes classy things and what have you. And then she points out this pendant and she says, "I wish I had something like that." And obviously Wayne sees his opportunity here. He's like, he's got a bit of spare cash that he won at cards. Yeah. He thinks if I buy her that'll
what's the damage? Yeah.
Well, I think he hopes that buying the pendant is going to be a bit of a leg opener, isn't it? It's going to guarantee him a bit of action.
A bit more expensive than the gin and orange, but
Exactly. So she says how much, and he says how much, and she says it's about £40. And he says, "Right, I've won the money on pontoon." So he takes her in and he buys her the pendant. So they're driving down the street again, which is in Hamburg, and it's one of those ships passing in the night moments. As Wayne and the girl are driving down the street, the camera looks up and it shows that the other lads are stood outside of a porn cinema.
Having a good look at the pictures before they go in.
Yeah, well, and Dennis says, "This'll do." And Neville's none too impressed. And he said, "Oh, it's just for a laugh." So again, they show there's like an overground train. Again, that's in Hamburg, the location, and they park under it, and they're having a bit of a snog. And Wayne goes for the old old feet.
The old chest grab, yeah.
He's like, "Well, hey, Wayne's like, you know, he's got dressed up. he's laid on his, he's laid the best lyrics he can possibly.
Spent his cash.
Yeah, and he's splashed the cash, and he just thinks, I'm going to be able to grab her titties underneath the railway bridge. Absolute class. Yeah. So he gets the knockback. She's straight away, and then so Wayne tries to lead the conversation down the road of going back to hers, because he says, look, I'd invite you back to mine, but it's a hut with 6 other blokes. And then he says, he goes, it's probably not the same at your place though, is it? Hint, hint, hint. He's knowingly. And she says, no, but I have my mother, my father, my sister. And as soon as Wayne hears that, you can see.
It's game over, isn't it? That's game over.
Yeah. Not a happy camper at all. And she again, then, Wayne changes. Wayne's demeanor changes because of the fact that he's realized that he's not going to get his leg over.
No. And
then this has a knock-on effect, which means that her demeanor changes. She realizes that he's just.
You just want to go to bed with me.
Yeah. He's just after a bunk up. So she straight away cuts it off, and she says, I must go home soon. And she basically says that she squeezed him in today because she's working tomorrow and she's seeing somebody else tonight. And she says, I think you are angry. And obviously Wayne is angry. He says, I'm not angry, in a very angry voice, but he says, I'm bitterly disappointed. And she says, I think you always expect that I think that you would always expect, and he's like, and she goes, basically saying that he expects birds to shag him. And she says, but I will disappoint you. And then Wayne does the typical, he's like, well, actually, I quite fancy a quiet night in.
Well, yeah.
And it's like
no choice.
Like when I was a doorman and people used to try and get into the club and you'd be like, you can't come in, and they go, well, I didn't want to come in anyway. And you're like, your actions of attempting to walk in the building showed me that. So that was quite funny. I quite fancy a night in anyway. So they cut back to the hut. The lads come in. Moxie's asleep. Moxie looks obviously very, very sick.
Oh, but just before that, didn't she say, where should I take you? And Wayne said, take Stalag 17. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. So she drops it. She drops him back to the hut, and she drives back to the hut. And again, we find out later on, that she now knows where the hut is.
Yeah.
So obviously they come in. Moxie's asleep. Moxie's looking ill, and Nev straight away notices that his money's gone. Should be in his shoe. I mean, not very security conscious, is it really? You know what I mean? Leaving your money in a shoe. I
remember when I went to Thailand, where I met you, I kept my money in my shoe in my hotel room. I suppose that's the first place someone would look.
Do you not have a safe in the room, like?
Well, I don't. I think no. In one of the hotels was the Ambassador was good, but then I stayed at one was sort of £8 a night, so there was no safe in there. So
it'd have been better off keeping it in your pocket than your shoe. But anyway, Neville, proved how security conscious he is by keeping his money in a shoe, a bit like yourself there, George.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he realizes his money's gone, and the lads are like, look elsewhere, da. And Neville's like, look, I know what happened. I cleaned my shoes. I put my money in my shoe. It's definitely been pinched. And Bomber's like, how much? And Neville's had £33 stolen. So as we worked out last week, I think it was they're making about 40 quid a day on there, something like that. So it's basically more or less a day's wages that he's had nicked. So, and then Oz goes and checks under his pillow, and Oz's watch is gone. So they go and they question Moxie. Did anyone come in? And Moxie, I've got a temperature. I'm not a well man. I sounded like Barry there. That was me terrible Scouse accent. Anyway, so Oz straight away, you can tell the mood changes instantly, and Oz is like, so you were here on your own. And then obviously the penny drops with Moxie, and he realizes that he's basically being accused.
Under suspicion. Yeah.
And I'm sure that they know that he's been in prison and stuff like that. And then Bomber pipes up and he says, look, you've not been here that long. We've all been mates, and then you've turned up.
They all crowd around the bed, don't they?
Yeah. And then Moxie says, no. He says, if I wasn't sick, I'd have you outside. And us is like, do you reckon? And as we find out towards the end, there's a bit where, in one of the other episodes where Oz has got Moxie up against the wall.
Yeah.
I think that Moxie's, got a bit of bravado going on there. And he definitely wouldn't be going outside with Oz. But so Wayne comes back in, and Den's like, you're back early.
What's the word? Yeah.
Yeah, but Wayne inadvertently starts digging himself into a hole. He says, I didn't pull, it does happen. And he goes, but it cost me enough, the meal, the jewelry, and he talks about how much money he's been spending. And then they say, oh, you had money. And he says, I was down to you lot. And he's like, inadvertently, he's opening himself up to becoming a suspect. And he says, I won it all off Pontoon. And then the focus goes off Moxie, and it goes on to Wayne. And he says, what's the word then? And then Moxie pipes up. He's like, he was here. And Den obviously explains that there's money and the watch gone. And Wayne, you can see Wayne, he's like, nah. And obviously Nev explains, where the money's gone from and stuff like that. And then Wayne says, I better check Wayne says, I better check, as if to say, I better check my stuff. Because at the moment, he still thinks that they're all, he still thinks they're all on the same side.
Yeah.
And Oz, Detective Oz, Oz is like, maybe we should check. And he goes, what? And he goes, check your tackle. And then the penny drops. Wayne realizes that he is now under suspicion. And he says, oh, what a prick I am. I thought you were my mates. And Den's like, we're not saying nothing, but we just want to check it. We just want to check. And Wayne quite rightly says, if you check the others, and he's like, what is it he calls them? He goes, the Naffin Geordie Mafia.
Think you're God's gift.
Butter wouldn't melt. And Den tries to be the voice of reason, sort of. And he says, look, it just simplifies things. We're looking at everyone's things, even mine. And then, Nev starts getting a bit leery. And Nev's obviously got, he's got his mates to back him up and what have you. But look, Nev's, as much as Nev is quite quiet, I don't think he's not obviously afraid from sticking up for himself. And he says, look, I'm not saying it's you. And Wayne's like, you bloody Geordies, you think you're God's gift. And anyway, so Wayne pushes Nev, and then he pushes him again, and he says, don't shove me. And he goes, oh, what? And Nev shoves him back. And he goes, don't shove me. And he goes, piss off. And then Wayne throws the gimpest punch known to man. And Wayne slips it and rolls under. And Neville punches the locker, obviously catches his hand on the metal bit, and he busts his hand. Now this is so then something very, very funny happens. So Nev's like, oh, he's bleeding, and Dennis just goes, wrap that round it. He picks up Barry's shirt off the ironing board. It's a white shirt that Barry, it's obviously a clean white shirt that Barry's been ironing. He starts wrapping it around Neville's bleeding hand, like not a thought about, what he's actually doing.
Yeah.
And the thing is Barry is too timid to say anything.
Yeah.
Barry sees his shirt being wrapped around Nev's bleeding hand, and he's like, And anyway, Wayne's like, go on and look at me stuff. He goes, but I'm shipping out. He goes, I'd rather move in with the Turks than be with you lot.
Yeah.
And, anyway, so, look, Dennis sees sense. He goes, look, forget about it. Nobody's going to look at anyone. And then Moxie's still, Moxie's still in a different conversation. And Moxie's like, oh, I've been delirious. Everyone's like, what the fuck? They're 10 minutes past that conversation, and he's still having it. So, Dennis sort of brings a solution. He says, look, he says, if the stuff's back on the table in the morning, all will be.
Yeah.
And Barry comes over and he goes, can I have my shirt back? You know, I'm covered in fucking Neville's blood and that. And, just the way that Barry's like, can I have my shirt back, please? And obviously, look, so, you know, Wayne and Neville, and, you know, they sit down and they bury the hatchet. And Wayne admits, you know, that his attitude may be born out of frustration.
Yeah.
Basically being left with blue balls, I think is the saying.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's been left high and dry. So, you know, no hard feelings, and him and Nev make up. And then when Nev says, he goes, I should be saying that, and Wayne goes, yeah, but you're a thick Geordie bastard. All right, okay. Anyway, so and then he goes to shake hands and he squeezes Nev's back.
That's it, yeah.
Anyway, so Oz is like, you know, Oz is, oh, it's bad business, this, it's bad business. And Nev's like, well, look, you know, and he says it'll be a miracle if the stuff's returned. So obviously they wake up and they go to bed. And they wake up in the morning, Dennis checks, and there's nothing there. And Neville asks, is it there? No. So Dennis says, you know, look, you need to get your hand looked at, and you need to go to a doctor. And he says the doctor's, obviously there must be an on-site doctor or a company doctor or whatever. He says the doctor's not here. The doctor's not here at the weekend. He says, well, you'll have to go private because it'll go septic. So they cut to the doctor's waiting room, and lo and behold, who's at the work?
Ingrid.
Well, the beautiful Ingrid.
She is beautiful, actually. Yeah, very beautiful.
Yeah, she's very tasty. So Wayne's Doris is the doctor's receptionist, and Neville, again quite out of character, but you know, proves that he is a red-blooded man anyway. Is very smiley and chatty with young Ingrid, and you know they're having a bit of small talk. You know, what's it? And she says, I think you're from the north. Obviously, she explains that she worked in Maidstone, and Neville says, oh, she says, what's it like up north? And Neville says, well, it's pretty desperate, but I like it. So, and then, you know, obviously gives details about his marriage, talks about he's been married for 5 years, gives his date of birth as 1958. So
yeah,
this is 83, isn't it? So
yeah, he's 7 years younger than me. So yeah, he must be what? Oh, I suppose then he was. God, well, I was no good at maths. Well, yeah, I was born 65.
If you work, I mean, so this was so he was born in 58. So this was 83. So, you know, you're looking at, he's around 25-ish, and he says he's been married for 5 years. So, you know, and she says you got married around 20.
But you know, in real life, Neville is actually older than Dennis.
Really?
Yeah, I think I read that. Yeah, he's old, even though Dennis, he thinks the older one.
He definitely looks it.
Yeah, Kevin Watley's older than Dennis. Yeah.
Oh wow!
I have to check that, but I'm pretty sure I read that.
Yeah, check that. But there you go. There's another bit of There's another bit of George Bradley trivia.
A bit of unconfirmed trivia. That's always the best.
So, and she says, you know, what's your address? And he says, what here? And she says, yeah. And he says, it's the Bico building site. And straight away she goes, I know someone there who is also English. And Neville says, perhaps I know him. And she just says, perhaps. And you can see that obviously her memory of Wayne is not very happy. And you know, I mean, how many English people are on that site? There can't be that many. You know, two Britties and a couple of Chippies and whatever, and they're all in the same hut. So I mean, straight away, you'd think Neville would have been like, well, it must be someone in the hut, and you'd think he'd have put two and two together. But anyway, you know, he's quite enamoured, and
yeah, I think he's more focused on her. He's just he doesn't really care about anything else.
He doesn't want to force the issue. Anyway, but she then says, oh, you've got to come back and get the stitches out Monday at 5 p.m. Now this is Saturday. This is like Saturday morning. So I mean, like, I don't know about you, I've had stitches loads of times, and you've normally got to leave them in at least a week.
Yeah.
But apparently they're going to take these stitches out after 2 days. So I think they could have done with a medical. I think there's a friend of mine, Michaela. She's a nurse and a paramedic and like very, very, basically, she's like the most senior you can get without being a doctor. And she is the medical advisor on EastEnders.
Right.
And various other. She works for a lot of TV production companies. So if there's on these TV programs, if they need, if someone's got to be bandaged up or whatever, she will say, right, you've got to do this and do this and she'll make it look authentic. So they could have done with my friend Michaela working on there, giving some advice about the stitches out.
I think it was in the old days, wasn't it? You had to have your stitches out, but I mean, more modern stitches, they just come out on their own. I mean, mine did with my chest. Yeah.
It depends where you get them, I think. So you are right, there are certain stitches that dissolve after a period of time and certain stitches that need taken out. So like when I last year, when I fractured my
you're right, yeah, I remember that, yeah.
Boxing, I had a metal plate put into my eye socket and I had, my face was cut open there and I had to get stitches out. So about a week after the operation, I had to go to the hospital and they had to take the stitches out. But obviously, because they were on my face, and you can't even notice.
No.
The doctor did a fantastic job. So I think that obviously the smaller the stitches, maybe.
But my ones on my chest, they just a lot of stitching was done inside. They do it inside.
Oh, right. Well,
so they just dissolve,
Yeah. So
bit of stitch trivia there.
Any more medical problems? No, right. So anyway, never get these stitches out. And so she says to him, she says, "How did you hurt your hand?" And he goes, "Oh, I hit the door." And she goes, "You hit the door?" He goes, "Oh," and like he said, and he goes, "Oh, but I was trying to hit a friend."
Yeah.
What? So anyway, it cuts back to the bar, and Oz, again, Oz is still in his little fantasy world of being in the prisoner of war camp. And Oz is like, "Oh, it's bad for morale, this, the morale of the hut." And Dennis pulls him out on it. He says, "Look, we're not prisoners of war. Haven't got the stiff upper lip here." And like I say, Oz is still like in that POW camp fantasy. And Dennis even says to him, he says, "You live in a dream world." And he goes,
"You're a bit queer, doesn't he say? You're a bit queer."
But no, he says, "We've got character." And he says, "We're all," and Dennis is like, "Look, we'll live with a bunch of overgrown adolescents who are either boozing or moaning." And Oz talks about trust. And Dennis says, this is the best one. This is typical Oz again. He's like, Oz, he goes, "Oh, it's all about, we trust each other, we trust each other, we trust each other." And he's hammering about the thing about trust. And Dennis saw his eyes, "So you're convinced that nobody in the hut is a thief?" And Oz goes, "I know. I went through everyone's locker when you were in the shower." So he's talking about trust. And then Dennis is like, "What?" And he goes, "Well, someone had to." And he's like, "What about the trust?" And he goes, "Well, it proves me point." And he goes, "You're that." And then he says, "You're a queer one, you lad." And Oz says, "I not so much of the queer."
Less of the queer, yeah.
And then he says, "So you found nothing?" And Oz says, "The sum total of our possessions wouldn't fetch a fart at a bringing by seal."
Yeah.
Because we're a threadbare lot. And Dennis said, "Should we bring cushion covers or something?" And Dennis is like, "Oh, you're a big daft thing." Calls him a big daft thing. And then Oz back on talking about his spy books. He goes, "Well, I've been this spy book." And he goes, "They quote these documents in this special stuff." And Oz talks on about his plan. And then he says about on board, and he goes, "Well, you guys, they were on a boat and all that." And he's like, "But we're not on a boat." Anyway, Oz outlines the plan. He's going to go and buy this special lotion that Oxford. And he goes, "I want to catch the thief because they took my watch." And then they cut back to the hut, and Barry's bike wasn't working, and Barry's had his motorbike fixed. And again, this arouses suspicion among the people, among the hut. And obviously everyone starts questioning where he's got the money from to fix the bike. And then Moxie's borrowing Wayne's Walkman, and Wayne comes back in, and Moxie's like, "I was just borrowing this." And then he talks about, he goes, "Everyone's so suspicious." And then he, like in one breath he goes, "Everyone's so suspicious," and then in the next breath he's like, "Where did Barry get the money from for his bike?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh,
put it on someone else." Yeah.
He goes, Even I'm at it now. And he says, can I borrow your, he basically says, can I borrow your Walkman? And Wayne's like, yeah, as long as I don't catch a cold off the headset. And then Moxie obviously looks at the tape. She goes, I've never heard half of these. And Wayne's like, well, I don't expect you have. Obviously, Wayne's taste in music, he's probably quite into punk and what have you with that.
Yeah.
And then Nev comes back, and again, the first thing Nev questions Barry too, where did he get the money from to fix his bike? And he says, he's got 7 stitches and he's going to have a doctor's bill. And then here we go. So the irony, the first big bout of irony, and Neville says, and like, I mean, again, would you think that during Wayne's conversation with this girl, the fact that she worked as a doctor's receptionist might come up in the fucking conversation, and the fact that she told him she was at work on Saturday, and so Neville says there was a very pretty girl at the doctor's, very pretty. Obviously the irony, and Wayne's like, "Oh, what was she like?" And Nev's clearly taken aback, and then he asks Wayne about the one from yesterday, ironically not knowing they're the same girl, and says she was a cut above. And then so Wayne, obviously, he says, after his disaster from yesterday, he says he's going to stick to a worse type of bird. Wayne's going to focus on the slags now.
One who'll get his leg over,
Yeah. And Nev's like, I cannot write to Brenda with me hand. And Wayne's very true. He says, what are you going to write? He goes, you've had your money nicked, you've been laid off, and you met a beautiful girl at the doctor's. Wayne outlines that it's probably not the best idea for Nev to be writing home with the current situation. So anyway, Monday morning, they're all back at work and they're all doing their relevant things. The lads are, the lads are laying bricks. Wayne's doing his being a chippy. Barry's, being a sparky and doing his cables and And you see Nev cutting to get the stitches out. And so Nev's trying to make an excuse to come back and see the girl, isn't he?
That's it, yeah.
Maybe he's actually make another appointment. He could turn septic. And he's like,
she realizes this as well, doesn't she?
Yeah,
she's not picking up.
And he says, I can come back at any time. And she's like, look, it's not necessary. But then she puts her coat on and she says, and now we go. So she's like, and Nev's like, and she goes, I'll walk out with you. So it's all sort of still fairly innocent. But you can see that Nev is very, very happy with the situation. And,
you can't believe his luck.
Absolutely. So again, they're walking towards a car, which again is the location is all still in Hamburg. And she, she says that she's moving to Munchen. She's going to school. And, Neville talks about how he had to leave school and he wanted to go to university, but, his dad was dead and his mother needed the money. And he's got little brothers. He's got a little brother and sister by all accounts. And he says, I started my apprenticeship when I was 16 as a bricklayer. And anyway, so she offers to give him a lift. She'll I give you a lift? And he says, and he starts to tell her where it is. He's like, well, what you need to do is and she goes, it's okay. I know where it is. Yeah. And still, like, you'd think Neville would be like, who do you know? Like,
there's only one hut of English, isn't there? I mean,
exactly.
The rest the Ayatollahs and the Germans.
So anyway, so they're back on the site, and you see the dodgy looking Turk walking around carrying stuff, and Oz clearly suspects the Turk, and he says, where's Nev going? And he says, he's dragging the injury out, for someone that says he's short of money, he should be back at work, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then, but obviously Nev is going to meet Ingrid. Now, here we go. So when they show the outside of the outside of the bar, that's actually in Dusseldorf.
Oh, okay.
That's not in Hamburg. So, but Nev, obviously, Nev's not there for the same reason Wayne is. Nev's just, he obviously quite likes the girl, and, had it have been a different situation, maybe things may have been different. But, Nev's there with photographs of his wife. This is my wife, and, and she says, so he's showing her a photograph with her at Lake Ullswater. And she goes, this is very pretty country. I think it's not where you live. So So yeah, and he's like, that's the Lake District. It's not Newcastle. And he talks about his best man and, you know, how he got married young and he doesn't regret it. And he says, you know, he's just here for cash and it's a sacrifice. And he says, you know, again, this is somebody else. Another time he was questioned, I think it was Helmut, said he doesn't like Germany. He says, no, he says, it's not that I don't like Germany. He says, I just, you know, I'd rather be home. He's a very, very homely guy, is young.
Oh, yeah.
And he talks about money, but then he talks about how he lost at cards. He had some stolen, no overtime. He's hurt his hand, but she knows, and she goes, he could have worked today. And Nev's got a very sheepish grin, and he's like, you know, oh. And he hints at seeing her again, but you know, she's obviously, look, you know, it's Wednesday, or is it Thursday? Is it Wednesday, Thursday? No, that's right. So she's going to, she says she's got to pack, got to go and see her family, and then she's going to Munich, which I believe, yeah. And then she says, you know, Neville, you're a sweet guy. And she goes, look, I've got this thing, I shouldn't have taken it anyway. She goes, why don't you give it to your wife? And she gives him Wayne's necklace.
I think, doesn't she say you're very sweet, but your friends are not so?
Yeah. Because they wouldn't have told me that they were married and whatever. So anyway, she, like, you know, he says, I'll get the bill. And she, without giving him a chance, basically stands up, gives him Wayne's necklace and walks out. And it's like, you know, torn between what should he do? So it cuts back to the hut, and Nev's in the hut, and Oz bursts in the hut, like that, scares the shit out of Nev.
Well, Starsky and Hutch.
Well, so he starts, and again, Detective Oz. So he starts talking about the MMO, the means, the means, the motive, and the opportunity. And Nev's like, oh, how man, give it a rest. Let's just get back to normal. But Oz is like a dog with a bone, and he won't let it go. And then our friend the Turk comes in, and Oz is like, you know, blatantly, he's like, this one's on the list. And then the thing is, I mean, it's a bit weird. I don't know. Nev just, I mean, he obviously doesn't like people knowing his business, and if people found out he had the necklace, he'd have to explain about the girl, and Nev's acting pretty cagey around the necklace, and he's trying to stash it in his locker without anybody seeing. And then Oz says, you know, that him and Neville are not suspects, as they're the only victims. They're the ones that have been burglarized.
Yeah.
Because we've got nothing to hide. He says, we've got nothing to hide. And then Nev like looks at his locker where he's just actually hidden something. So the horn goes, and it's a different horn, and it's sort of less, it's on the side of the admin hut, I think, this horn, and it's sort of slightly less prisoner of war campy. But then, you know, it's the end of the day. Nev washes his trowel, and Bomber says, why do you look upset? And Nev's like, I got a letter off Brenda. She's had to cancel the tiles. So, you know, obviously Brenda's the, you know, putting the thumb screws on to Neville about what's going on. So Nev says he's going to go into town, and Oz gets Barry to give him a lift. And so Nev gets the tram. And again, this is actually in Dusseldorf.
Oh, right.
Those trams there where Nev gets off, that's actually in Dusseldorf. So they you see him turn up to the pawnbrokers. Now the pawnbroker is in like that actual shop, like where that was, that's in Hamburg.
Oh, okay.
He's like, obviously he's filming it in two different locations, but so they shows the three balls. Now, I don't know, for some reason I just assumed that the three balls of a pawnbroker was an English thing. Now, apparently, I looked this up because I was a bit curious.
Yeah.
So here we go.
There's a bit of trivia coming here.
More trivia.
Can sense it. Yeah.
So, the three balls of the three gold balls of a pawnbroker were supposed to reference St. Nicholas. So apparently St. Nicholas saved three girls from destitution by lending them 3 bags of gold so that they could get married. So that's where the 3 balls of a pawnbroker comes from, apparently. So Nev goes into and then he's like, and it's like the way that they cut. So Nev's got the necklace in his hand, and the necklace is there, and the cut on his hand is there, and it's like the two. You know, you've got he's got the thing that's prevented him from having money, and the way of him getting money, like in hand, and it's like the way that it focuses in there on the hand, and And anyway, so Oz is coming out of security shop again. That's on location in Hamburg. And he obviously, you know, you'd think Barry would have been like, "What you doing?" And Barry's like, "What? Like, oh, what did you get?" And he goes, "Oh, I just got a lock for me locker."
That's it. Yeah.
Barry and again, the ship's passing in the night. Barry and Oz are on the bike, and Oz sees Neville coming out of the pawn shop, and they, you know, they cut back on site, and this time it's the group of guys who are around Nev, and they're all.
That's it. Yeah.
And they're ganging up on him, and Nev says, "Oh, it's like the Spanish Inquisition." And obviously, if you're a fan of Monty Python, I mean, no one expects the Spanish Inquisition. And he says, "It's none of your business." And Dennis is like, "I think it is, Bonnie lad." Anyway, so, you know, he's saying, "Look, if I had Nick Oz's watch, how much would that be worth?" And he goes, "What? I pretended to have me money pinched so that I would get away with stealing Oz's watch." He's like, "How, man?" Anyway, Dennis tries to placate him, and he says, "Look, you're the last person we think's stolen anything." And then Oz, you know, so he goes, "But you have got money troubles." And Dennis is like, "Oh, will you shut up?" And Dennis is like, "Look, you know, if you're in a situation where you've got,
we want to help you, yeah,
we want to help you." And Oz is like, "Well, I don't know if he's got anything of value to pawn." And Dennis has fucking got the hump. He's like, "Oz, don't be a prick all your life. Take an hour off." And Neville's like, "It's nobody's business but my own." And Wayne pipes up and he says, "Look, you know, we'd all like to help. And, you know, we're all in your corner." So you know, then Nev breaks.
Yeah.
Nev breaks and he tells the story. And he goes,
"Let him get it off his chest."
Yeah. He's like, "I met this lass." And Wayne's like, "Who was she?" Again, irony. And Neville says, "Well, it's no one you would know." Irony. And he tells the story of the present and Brenda's letter, and he pawned the lass's present. And Oz, you know, this is like, so Oz has been like, you know, accusing him of all kinds of things. And then when so Oz basically thinks he's the thief. And then when he finds out he's not the thief, he then he says, "Oh, well, that's charming. You pawned the lass's present." So, well, you kind of make Oz happy. You know what I mean? He finds out that it wasn't what he thought, and now he's mugging him off for the fact that he sold the lass's present. So, you know, Oz as never happy as always. Anyway, so, you know, Neville says he got 25 quid for it, and that's nearly what he got pinched. So Dennis is happy. It's all sorted. Let's go for a drink. And, you know, they say, "Let's go for the drink. It'll be good for the morale of the hut."
Yeah.
So, you know, they all go, and Wayne says, "Look, we'll go to the pawn shop." Wayne offers to lend Nev the money to get the present out of the pawn shop, you know, because he thinks it's special, and Neville accepts. And again, irony. Neville says, "Oh, you know,
you would have liked her."
Because you would have liked her, Wayne. Anyway, so they're all in the bar and they have a toast to our hut. And Oz has slipped off back to the hut to lay his trap.
Yeah.
The detective, the spy novel, the prisoner of war camp. Oz is fucking all over it. So he goes back to the hut to lay his trap, and he gets, I think it's 100 Deutschmarks, which is, I think they say is what, 25 quid or 40 quid.
Yeah.
It's you know, but it's a decent chunk of dough. And he obviously gets a thing. He swabs this stuff all over the thing, and then so Barry walks in and first thing finds this note on the floor. Yeah, it says it's worth about 25 quid. So Barry picks it up, and then it just gets passed
to everyone.
So every single person gets their hands on it, and then they leave it on the table. So it comes to the morning, and the Turk comes in, the shifty Turk. And Wayne's about to walk out, and Oz looks up and grabs him, and he goes, "I've got him, I've caught the thief. And then and he tells of the trap. And obviously he says, Dennis knows. And he says, I've quoted this note. And everyone said, "But the note's on the table." And then he's like, everyone's got green hands. He's like, "Oh, well, I've got it. And then, this is the best bit. So they're all distracted. Like looking at each other's green fingers and all.
Yeah.
And what happens
The Turk picks it up. Yeah.
Turk picks it up and gets and walks out the hut. So the Turk robs the money. So, it's pretty much confirmation there that the Turk is the thief.
Yeah.
So, and Oz is like looking very confused. Oz was convinced that his plan was going to be the greatest plan ever.
Yeah.
He was going to be, he was going to make himself look like the hero of the hut. And he's like, and Oz is like, I don't get it. He's like, he's very, very confused. And Nev's like, does this come off? He goes, I've got a tattoo here. I don't want it now. I've got green fingers. So they cut to the pawn shop. They're back at the pawn shop, and Nev comes out of the pawn shop.
And you know what's coming, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, you can see this coming a mile off, and Wayne's like, oh, go on then, show us what you've got. Let me have a look. And he pulls it out, and basically Nev shows Wayne the necklace a couple of days ago. And, obviously they've got the green fingers and they're holding the necklace. And then it comes up and the last scene is like Wayne looks at Neville.
Stunned.
Like, you can just basically see it's all like the pennies dropping now and it's all falling in place. He's like, oh.
All the pennies are dropping, yeah.
That's it, all the pennies are dropping. So Wayne realises that Neville was chirping up his Doris. And that is it.
Yeah.
So that is the final scene of the episode. So like I say, that is series 1, episode 4, Suspicion. And so the titles are fairly brief. Herr Ulrich gets a title, Ingrid, the barman, the Turk, and the German worker. And the guy that plays the German worker, he gets a few. He's in a few different episodes as that German worker extra. So that is, it was a more succinct episode, I think, today. There was a lot less dialogue and more, it was more, visual storytelling, which made us a little bit quicker today, which is good, which is apparently it'll please me mother. My mother doesn't like things more than an hour long. But anyway, so yeah, like I say, if anybody has anything to add, if you've got, like I say, any feedback, anything at all, please don't hesitate to email us on Auf Wiedersehen Again @gmail.com. Please do follow us on Instagram @Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast, Twitter @Auf Again, Facebook Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast. Do like and share the page, and on YouTube Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast. Do subscribe and click the bell. And remember, we're also on all audio platforms, all good, everywhere you get your podcasts: Spotify, iTunes, Anchor, Google Breaker, and many, many more. And remember, our theme music is written and performed by Lee Dosky, and we are sponsored by Top Gun Tattooing. That's number 12, the Harris Arcade in Reading. That's topguntattoo.co.uk, 01189 968 667. You get a 20% discount with the code Hadaway and Shite when you speak to Zach.
And you get a free tattoo.
Free tattoos. And remember, if you want to be in with a chance of winning the Pat Roach book, you must be a follower of us on social media. So either Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or preferably all three. And if you are a follower of us on social media, you can be in with a chance of winning the Pat Roach book. And that will be coming up. Obviously, we'll release this episode on the Friday, and on that same Friday, I'll make all the posts up on social media. So you're going to have to follow and like and tag your friends, and we'll pick a winner at random, and we will send them the Pat Roach book. So that is it for Series 1, Episode 4, Suspicion, and we will be back next week with Episode 5. So until then, George.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen Pet.
Oh, yeah, man. All out of options, nothing to choose. I've been out on Netflix, I'm sick of the news. I'd sign up to Sky, but I don't want to pay. I've been on furlough since May. Now I'll go and listen to a Cockney attitude.